if you can take a look at the mushroom. This is the hat. It's trying to have you select it again using the same tools that you have, and only this time it's a little more free form. So for example, if I grab this first part, use the shift key or the icon that's up here to add to this piece. Sometimes it's easier to use the shift key there. And then when you get to a part that's straight, when you go into the icon here, if you know the keystroke for it, by holding the shift key down with the letter L, which is the keystroke for it, lets you modify the tool or pick the tool out of there. This time it has the straight line, so if I hold the shift key down, it's letting me add the bottom part of this mushroom, which is somewhat straight, not too straight. And as you add to this, I can see that the bottom part, I'm going to capture a little bit of that curvature right there. And do the same thing, just kind of add to it. Now if you go over the edge, like this part, went a little too far, just use the Option key and make sure that you select around that section to take it out, and then use the Shift key again to add to this selection here. So as you wrap that around, it comes across there. Okay, so now you have this, the part, again, just going into the layer and cutting that part, giving it a title, and again, just taking that layer above it on the face layer, double click, and just move this part of the character right over the top there. Again, this is just zooming into the grapefruit, and the only part they want is the fruit section here. So in the magnetic lasso tool, when you click on that, this section has a default of 34, and what happens is that when you click the mouse, all you're doing is dragging the mouse along the edge, and it's looking at the contrast of the pixels, and it's based off of that. So right now, if you look at the top of the page, it's set to 10, and as I'm not clicking, the mouse is setting the points, but if I go off the page, for example, it'll start to set points. And the only way to get back along this path is you have to go and hit the delete button, and it brings you back on track of where you're trying to grab this from. And like I said, this is good on some photography when you're grabbing somebody off the background. It lets you come down, and I can also, as I drag this, click and set a point, and at least it highlights there. And when I get to the end, it'll just make that selection, and this whole piece is now highlighted. Again, I have to click on the background layer that has the image and just go to Layer and go to Cut and double click the hand tool. Now again, this is just showing this piece, but once I have this section and move this, you see it's coming across, and now I have these pieces highlighted. So when I click the outside arrow, I can rotate this to transform the selection a little bit easier. I can modify this. I can go in and use the option to modify this selection and go ahead and place that on there. So right now, this one is behind it, so I don't need to move it at all as I've done the others, but I can modify it and take a look at the original and see about how to place that in there. Once I like it, go ahead and click OK. And again, if I hold the Option key and drag this, it makes a separate layer onto the screen here. If this was all selected and I moved it this time to duplicate it, it keeps everything on the same layer. So when it's selected, it keeps it on the same layer. When it's deselected, it puts it separately. So I just drag this over to the side, and I can either go to Edit, Transform, and flip this horizontally, or as you take a look at the handles, just zoom this, I can just grab the handle, stretch it over. There's no way to keep it the same size, so I have to estimate it when I do it that way. So that's the only downside of this. But once it's there, click on this part. Auto Select allows me to click on the image, and whatever layer it is, it jumps right to that and gives me that image. So there's the ears. Again, I'm keeping them separate on this. I'm just going to give this ear with it, or an L after it. So that just gives me the title on the page so I know what I'm grabbing from. Let's take the magic wand. When you zoom into it, you can see that it's a little pixelated as you go, but the white background is going to help you select this. But first you're going to take the rectangular selection, make sure you're on the bottom layer, and just draw a selection that goes around the item so that when you think of this, the whole piece is moved. I'm just going to undo that. And now you're going to take the magic wand tool and hold the Option key down and click into the white area that's outside of it. And what it does, it subtracts that piece and just brings you right back onto this section. So it's a tricky way that they've put together in putting that onto the piece. So while it's on this layer, just going to cut it from there. Double click the hand tool. Take the eye as you go across, you'll see it's still behind. So I'm just going to drag it above the face layer just so you can see it. And now you have the selection. So it's just a matter of placing them there. Hold it, don't select it, but just do the Option, move it over, and edit, transform, and flip it horizontally, and now you have this image. Okay. So what you now have to work with is the selection, and since auto select is there wherever I click on and grab, since all these parts are on a separate layer, I can use the arrow key and everything is still able to be moved or modified. And I can sit there and modify these pieces a little bit. Show you a little bit of this part. So it's just kind of finishing this part up before you start to add a few things. Now, the part that has the hat, I just want to show you that they can see that it's kind of curved. And if you zoom into this part, while this layer is highlighted, you can do like we've done before with the elliptical tool, make an elliptical selection pretty large on this so that it touches both sides. And you can just hit delete. And now when you click on this part, it'll allow you to move this section up. Okay. So as you modify the face, go to the bottom layer, this section here, and just hit Option, delete will fill it the foreground or the background, white or black. And now try to see if you can't give yourself a color background or start to modify the image, make it a little more individual, artistic on your side. So say I fill it with a blue background, for example. The other selection is I take a look that we haven't talked about is the crop tool. So I'm going to take the crop tool and just move it over a little bit and go ahead and hit that section. Just to give me a beginning basic part there, and we'll modify it. The picture, it has the background layer. It has all of these parts and pieces. So what I'd like you to do is to create a folder that has all these images in it. So I select the bottom layer, which is the ear on mine, Shift key and select the top. So all the layers except for the background are highlighted. And in the sub window, just to click on there and go to New Group from Layers. Okay, hold on a second. Click OK. So now I have this all in one folder, and now I can duplicate that. So I have the original folder and a second one that I can start to manipulate separately and always have a copy of the first one.